It was all the way back in 1905 that the first ever mountain stage of the Tour de France took place. Since then, countless stories have been told and legends made on the famous cols which litter the route each year. So whittling them down to just 10 hasn't been an easy task. But we tried our best, so here are GCN's top 10 climbs that we love to watch at the Tour de France. Now, if there's one climb that has become synonymous with the Tour de France, it has to be Alpe d'Huez. Every time it's included in the Tour de France route, thousands of fans flock to the roadside to watch the race unfold up its famous 21 hairpin bends, with each one containing the name of a former stage winner. It's also really easily accessible in the Alps and in close proximity to lots of other famous climbs, so if you ever get the chance, we thoroughly recommend that you check it out for yourself. One of the few climbs where you can see the top before you've even started climbing, Mont Ventoux is a mountain which has seen both triumph and tragedy. British rider Tom Simpson died here during the Tour de France back in the 60s, and there's actually a memorial to him towards the top. Now, the lower slopes of the climb are quite sheltered and tree-lined. However, it's the lunar open landscape towards the top which really characterises this mountain. In fact, in races, the riders often have to deal with high winds as much as steep gradients as they navigate their way to the peak. One of the highest roads in the Pyrenees, the Col du Tourmalet, can actually be tackled from two sides. And back in 2010, the riders had to do both, either side of the last rest day. It's been used a total of 82 times, which means more than any other climb in the Tour de France. And at the top, you can find a memorial to Jacques Godet. He was the race director from 1936 all the way up to 1987. Just like the Col du Tourmalet, the Col d'Aubisque, another Pyrenean climb, was first used all the way back in 1910. It's also been used loads of times since then, but only on 3 occasions has it hosted a stage finish. Now, here's one that you probably weren't expecting, the very recent addition to the Tour de France, but it's already seen a couple of fantastic stage finishes. It's not the longest, it's not the steepest either, but the 6 kilometres at 8.5% average really seem to encourage some very aggressive racing, and we've seen some fairly big time gaps too. It's the sort of climb that most good amateurs should be able to tackle reasonably comfortably, but if you do it yourself, make sure that you save some energy for the top, where you'll be greeted by 20% gradients. Not far from Alpe d'Huez is the Col du Galibier. At 2,645 metres above sea level, this is often the highest point of the Tour de France and can actually be tackled like the Tourmalet from 2 directions. Now, it's been used a total of 34 times since it was first introduced just after World War II in 1947. And if you tackle it from the north side, you'll also have to scale the Col du Telegraph first. This will give you a total of 31.4 kilometres or 2,120 metres of climbing. This one is not for the faint-hearted. At 2,360 metres above sea level, the Col d'Izoard is another very high alpine climb. In fact, if you tackle it from the southern side, it's a total of 31.5 kilometres. Each and every kilometre on both sides, you'll get a sign which says how far you've got to go and also how steep the average gradient is for the following kilometre. Motivating for some, completely demoralising for others. Now, it's been used 34 times in total at the Tour de France, and the exploits of the likes of Fausto Coppi are well documented. And if you do manage to make it to the top, you will be rewarded with a cycling museum. The sign at the top reads 2,000 metres, but in fact the Col de la Madeleine peaks at just 1,993. It's been used 24 times at the Tour de France, but has never hosted a stage finish. It's another climb which can be tackled from both sides, but on this occasion they both seem to be equally difficult. If you start from Planche, it will be a total of 28 kilometres with an average gradient of 5%, but that average gradient is slightly deceptive because there is a descent midway through. It sounds like the 1910 Tour de France was an absolute brute, because yet another climb to be introduced that year was the Col de Peyresourde. Now, the hardest side of this one is when you start in Bagnères de Luchon, 15.3 kilometres with an average gradient of 6.1%. It's a really popular climb in the Tour de France. In fact, over the last 30 years, it's been used more often than not, and in 2012, the riders tackled it from both sides. If you do ride up it yourself, it's a climb to really savour, especially over the last 2 kilometres. You've got plentiful hairpin bends and an incredible view on a clear day. The Plateau de Beille is a dead-end road down in the Pyrenees. It was first used back in 1998 and more lately in 2011 where Jelle van den Dert took the win. Now it might be a recent addition to the Tour de France, but we think it's got all of the ingredients to be an absolute classic. The average gradient is 7.9% and it's a full 16.1 kilometres. It really is a tough test. So those are our favourite Tour de France climbs, but what have we missed out and what are your favourites? You can let us know in the usual way, which is by leaving your comments in the section just below this video. Now if you'd like some tips on how to improve your own personal climbing, we've got just the video for you. You can find it by clicking just up there. On the other hand, if you'd like to see one of our profiles of Mont Ventoux itself, you can find that by clicking just down there. Thanks very much for watching. If you haven't already subscribed, it's absolutely free. All you've got to do is click anywhere on this screen around me.